Orion Vale had always known his life was small. Born to a human enclave tucked away on the outer edges of the Orlith Dominion, he had never belonged among the towering spires of crystal and metal that marked the alien empire. Yet, necessity had brought him here. As a linguistic archivist, his job was simple: to copy, study, and preserve words that had long been forbidden for human understanding. Still, even within the quiet chambers of the Crystal Court, danger lurked. Words had power, voices had weight, and some sounds were never meant to escape the lips of a human. It was late. The halls of the Dominion were empty, except for the distant hum of levitating couriers and the occasional shimmer of the air wards that marked the boundaries of each chamber. Orion had been working for hours, his fingers tracing ancient scripts carved into translucent crystal tablets, their meaning lost to centuries, but preserved for those who dared to seek them. He paused, leaning closer to the faint glow of the tablets, and whispered a line he had been studying for days. The words slipped out softly, almost timidly, a sound that felt alive in the stillness. And then he realized, with a sharp thrill that froze him in place, that someone was watching. Valeth. She stepped from the shadows like a vision born of the very crystal itself. Her skin shimmered faintly in the light, pale with an almost metallic hue, and her eyes, wide and alert, were unlike anything Orion had ever seen. They seemed to listen, not just with sight, but with some deeper, almost terrifying sense. He could feel it, though he could not explain how. She heard him, heard everything. "Careful, human," she said, her voice soft yet unmistakably present, almost vibrating in the air around him. "I can hear everything." Every instinct screamed to flee, yet curiosity, the same thing that had brought him to this place, kept him rooted. Valeth's gaze did not waver. She did not step closer, but neither did she retreat. She studied him, her expression unreadable, a mixture of wariness and fascination. There was something in the way she moved, in the subtle tension of her posture, that told him she was far more than a mere observer. She was a being forged by power, bound by rules he could not begin to understand, and yet, somehow, she was intrigued. "You speak freely," she said finally, almost as if testing him. "And yet you do not know what danger lies in your voice, or perhaps you do. Perhaps that is why you speak at all." He had never heard anything so strange, so weighted with meaning, yet entirely incomprehensible. Unravel centuries of control? He did not understand, but he felt the truth of it pressing against his chest, a cold, undeniable certainty. "Why are you here?" he asked finally, his voice steadier than he expected. "Why watch me?" Then she replied almost casually, "Because something in your voice does not lie, and the court notices lies even when they are quiet, even when they are hidden. You are dangerous, human, in a way you cannot know." There was a magnetic pull in her presence, a quiet tension that made the air between them thick with unspoken questions. I don't understand," he admitted. "I am nothing here, a human among aliens. I have no power. I do not even belong in this court." "Perhaps," she said softly, "and yet you have spoken something I have not heard for centuries. And now the wards are trembling. You have awakened something, whether you know it or not." But before the question could form on his lips, she stepped back, fading into the shadows once more. "Do not speak again tonight," she warned, her voice a whisper, barely audible but somehow still reaching him. "For your safety and for mine." He could not explain why, but he felt that obeying her was more than a matter of survival. It was something primal, an instinct that reached deeper than fear. The rest of the night passed in silence. Orion returned to his work, tracing the symbols on the crystal tablets with careful fingers. But every now and then, his ears caught the faintest echo of her voice, carried in the shifting hum of the wards. He shook his head and tried to concentrate, yet he could not deny the truth. Something had changed. The world itself felt different, as if the thin boundary between human and alien, between observer and observed, had thinned in a way that could never be undone. By dawn, Orion had made a decision. He would not speak carelessly again. He would hide his voice, even as his curiosity and desire to understand this alien world burned within him. He would obey Valeth's warning for now. But fate, as it often does, has a way of ignoring the plans of humans. Later that morning, he found himself summoned to the central chamber of the Dominion. The room was vast, its walls carved from translucent crystal that caught the early sunlight and scattered it into brilliant, prismatic beams. The Council of Elders, ancient Orlith nobles whose lifespans surpassed those of entire human generations, sat in a semicircle, their eyes like shards of polished gem, reflecting more than light. They reflected intent, scrutiny, and judgment. And at the center, waiting like a figure of myth, was Valeth. "You have been heard," she said, her voice clear, resonating through the chamber. "And yet you have not been punished. Tell me, human, why should you not be destroyed for the danger you carry in your tongue?" "I mean no harm." And for the first time, Ariane realized the full weight of Valeth's warning. She had not just been observing him. She had been deciding whether he was a threat or something far more important. Hours passed. Questions were asked, cryptic and careful. Answers were given, honest and simple. And all the while, Ariane felt a strange connection forming, unspoken yet undeniable. Valeth listened to him in a way no other being ever had, hearing the cadence of his voice, the tremor of his fear, the unguarded truth he did not even know he carried. By the time the council concluded its deliberations, the decision was made. Ariane would remain in the court, not as a mere servant or scholar, but as a presence to be watched, closer than any human had ever been permitted. Valeth would ensure his safety, but only so long as he continued to respect the boundaries she had set. As Ariane left the chamber, the corridors felt impossibly long. He could still hear the faint echo of Valeth's voice in his mind, a soft vibration that seemed to linger like a shadow. He did not know what had been awakened by his whisper. He did not know what danger, or what opportunity, awaited him in the days to come. But one thing was certain. His life, small and insignificant just hours ago, had become intertwined with the fate of a being whose power and curse surpassed imagination. And as he looked back at the towering figure of Valeth, fading into the crystal light, he felt the first stirrings of a truth he could not yet name. In a world where voices could kill and whispers could awaken, the smallest human sound had the power to change everything. Cliffhanger. The corridor leading to Valeth's private chambers felt impossibly long, though he had walked it many times before. He could hear the faint hum of the wards vibrating through the crystal walls, but today it seemed different, almost alive, almost aware of him. His footsteps echoed lightly, betraying the nervous rhythm of his heart. When he reached her chambers, the doors opened silently. Valeth stood there, waiting, motionless, framed by the soft prism of light spilling through the crystal windows. She was as mesmerizing as ever, the faint glow of her skin and the intensity of her eyes making the air between them feel charged. "You came," she said, her voice neither welcoming nor harsh, but carrying a weight that made Ariane's stomach twist. "I was summoned," he replied, keeping his tone neutral, "by the council." But he barely noticed his surroundings. All his attention was on her. "You should not have spoken last night," she said finally. Her voice was soft, but each word carried an undercurrent of danger. "The wards are fragile and the council is cautious. One wrong phrase, one careless whisper, and the consequences could have been permanent." "I didn't think it would affect anything. I just read the words aloud. That is why I am here. It carries honesty, and the wards hear it, they tremble." The words made his stomach tight with unease and something else he could not name, something that felt like longing. He tried to focus on the danger, on the warning, but he found himself unable to look away from her. "You will have to be careful," she continued, her voice softer now, almost a whisper. "Careful of the council, careful of the wards, careful of me. I will not always be able to protect you." The city below shimmered like a living constellation, towers of crystal catching the early light, streets filled with beings of impossible forms. She did not speak for a long moment, and then she said, "I do not like humans, or at least I am not meant to. They are fragile, fleeting, too much weight in too small a body." And yet, her voice trailed unfinished, leaving a strange tension in the air. "Yet what?" Ariane asked cautiously. "Yet there is something in you," she said, finally turning to face him. Her gaze was sharper now, almost piercing. "A clarity, a stillness, a honesty. You are like a single thread of light in endless darkness. And threads can unravel entire patterns if pulled correctly." It was full of tension, of potential, of unspoken questions neither dared ask. Ariane felt drawn to her, but more than that, he felt exposed, stripped bare by her perception. "You should leave now," she said, finally breaking the tension. "For your own safety. Then you risk everything, your life, your freedom, perhaps even your mind, and yet," she paused, studying him carefully, "perhaps that is a risk you are willing to take. Humans are curious that way." Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets, every gleaming crystal seemed to hum with energy. He could not shake the sense that something had begun, something far larger than himself, something that would pull him into events he could never have imagined. For the next several days, Ariane continued his work, meticulously copying ancient scripts, learning the sounds and meanings of languages long dead. Yet he could not shake Valeth from his mind. Her voice haunted him, not literally, but in memory, in the rhythm of her words, in the intensity of her gaze. He found himself listening differently, hearing the city in new ways, noticing the faint hum of the wards, the subtle vibrations in the crystal, the whispers of the air itself. And then one evening he heard it again. A soft, deliberate voice, not from the halls but in his mind, a voice that made his pulse quicken and his breath catch. "Do you understand, human?" Valeth's words were gentle but insistent. "Do you understand what you carry within you?" And yet he could not stop himself. "I think I am beginning to understand," he whispered back, his words trembling. There was a pause, almost unbearable in its intensity. Then her reply came. Orion worked under Valeth's watchful eyes, careful not to speak beyond necessity, careful not to draw attention from the council. Yet the bond between them deepened in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Every glance, every word, every shared silence carried meaning. Orion began to notice small things. The way she lingered by his side when the council was distracted, the faint softening of her expression when he answered honestly, the almost imperceptible tension in her posture when danger lurked nearby. He realized, with a mixture of fear and fascination, that he had become something more than a mere human observer. He had become a presence that mattered, perhaps more than he could yet comprehend. And then the first real test came. A council elder had discovered an anomaly in the wards, a fluctuation that suggested interference. Whispers of human influence spread quickly. Orion was summoned before the council, and his heart pounded with fear. He had not meant harm. He had only spoken, only listened, only existed. And yet he felt the weight of centuries of power pressing down upon him. Valeth was there, standing behind the elder, her expression calm but unreadable. When the elder spoke of punishment, of consequences, of erasure, her hand moved almost imperceptibly, a signal to him. And in that moment, Orion understood. She was protecting him, even at great personal risk. The council deliberated, their voices sharp and commanding, their eyes like blades. And through it all, Orion felt the strange, unexplainable connection to Valeth, the unspoken promise that she would not allow harm to come to him, not yet. When the council finally adjourned, Orion was left trembling in the chamber. Valeth approached, her expression softening in a way that almost frightened him. "You survived," she said, almost a whisper. "That is more than most humans could hope for. But you have begun to understand something crucial. Your voice matters, your existence matters, and now so does mine." That night when the corridors of the Dominion were empty and the air wards hummed softly in the darkness, Orion could hear her voice again, closer this time, more urgent. "Do you feel it, human?" she asked. "The threads of fate shifting, the weight of being heard. You will need to feel it every moment, because soon your choices will ripple farther than you can imagine." Cliffhanger. Orion Vale walked cautiously through the crystal corridors, his footsteps echoing lightly, betraying none of the fear that had rooted in his chest. Yet he could feel it, an undercurrent of tension in the air, like a storm waiting beyond the horizon. Every shard of light that bounced off the walls seemed sharper, every hum of the wards louder. Valeth had not summoned him that morning. She had not spoken to him, and yet he felt her presence like a shadow beside him. He could not explain why, but it was as though she were listening, always listening, not only to his words, but to his thoughts, to the small, hidden rhythms of his mind. That was the curse. He had begun to understand it more fully in recent days. Valeth was powerful beyond measure, yet imprisoned in a way that made her life unbearable. Her senses were heightened, stretched to impossible limits. Every lie, every hidden motive, every whisper of thought in the court echoed in her mind. The curse that gave her strength also tormented her, isolating her from trust, from companionship, from peace. And now he had stumbled into that world, into her web, by nothing more than speaking aloud. It began with a soft sound, a tremor in the wards, almost imperceptible. Orion paused mid-step, his ears straining. A chill ran down his spine. Then the words came, carried on the air in a voice that was not his own, soft, melodic, and terrifyingly aware. "You have awakened it," Valeth said, appearing from a side corridor as if she had been summoned by the vibration itself. Her eyes glimmered with the faintest hint of danger, the kind that could unravel a being with a single glance. "Do you understand what you have done?" "The words, I just wanted to understand them." How could words undo something so powerful? "And yet, you will not leave, will you? You will have to survive by your own wits and by your voice." And Orion, in turn, began to sense the strain beneath her calm, the invisible chains of her curse that threatened to crush her mind at any moment. It was during one of these lessons that he first realized the full reach of her senses. He had been practicing an old language, a series of tonal syllables that humans were never meant to utter aloud. The moment the sounds escaped his lips, Valeth's eyes widened and her body stiffened. "You can feel it," she said, her voice low, almost reverent. "Even in your ignorance, you stir forces older than the council itself. Be careful, human. These are not lessons in words, they are lessons in power." I thought it was just language." Orion felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely understood. Valeth did not speak of feelings, nor did she offer comfort, yet in her eyes he saw recognition, not fear, not disdain, but awareness. That night the council summoned Valeth unexpectedly. Orion had barely time to process the news before she had grabbed his arm with a strength that startled him. "Do not follow me," she whispered, pulling him into the shadows. "Do not be seen, do not speak. The council they suspect." The council was ancient, cruel in its own way, and he was human, small, fragile, unimportant. And yet Valeth trusted him, not fully, not openly, but enough to involve him in danger. The council chambers were a whirlwind of crystal light and command. Elders argued over what to do about the anomaly in the wards, unaware that it had been caused not by rebellion, but by a human who dared to speak truth. Valeth moved with precision, each gesture calculated to protect him while maintaining her position. Orion watched from the shadows, barely breathing, terrified that even a whisper could betray him, and yet he could not tear his eyes from her. She was radiant, terrifying, unyielding, her power evident in every controlled movement. And yet she hesitated at times, glanced toward him, and he knew that her restraint was not only political, it was personal. When the council finally adjourned, Valeth returned to him. "You have survived," she said quietly, "for now, but this is only the beginning. You must understand the curse if you are to survive it, and survive with me. Why I am feared and why I fear myself." Valeth taught him the nuances of her senses, the ways the curse twisted perception, the strategies necessary to speak without invoking its wrath. Orion learned to listen, not just with ears, but with awareness, understanding, and empathy. And slowly he realized the depth of the trust she placed in him, even as her curse made trust a near impossibility. One evening, while practicing a particularly difficult sequence of tonal syllables, Orion faltered. The wards around them trembled, a low vibration that sent shivers down their spines. Valeth placed her hand on his shoulder, steadying him, not with power, but with presence. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked. "I do," he admitted. "It's alive. I can feel it through the air, through the walls. You speak truth without realizing it. And truth, human truth, may be the only thing that can unravel what centuries of fear have built." That night, as he lay in his small chamber, Orion could not sleep. He could still hear Valeth's words in his mind, soft and insistent. "Do not falter. The threads have begun to move, and you may be the spark that frees me from what has bound me for centuries." And yet he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he could not walk away. Not now, not ever. Cliffhanger. And this listener, unlike Valeth, would not forgive mistakes. The Dominion was alive with unease. The wards hummed and flickered, their vibrations rippling through every corridor, every chamber, every crystal spire. Something had shifted. The council elders, usually calm and precise, whispered anxiously among themselves, their gem-like eyes darting toward Valeth whenever she passed. Even the wind that swept through the crystal towers seemed heavy with expectation, carrying echoes of voices long forgotten. Orion Vale moved cautiously, feeling the weight of the court pressing down on him. He had been warned to stay invisible, to speak only when necessary, and to follow Valeth's guidance without question. Yet each step brought him closer to a truth he did not fully understand. He was no longer merely an observer in the Dominion. He had become part of the balance itself, its spark, its danger, its potential undoing. Valeth appeared at his side without warning, her movements silent and precise. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she gestured for him to follow her down a narrow corridor, one seldom used by even the most trusted courtiers. The walls here were darker, less polished, absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. The hum of the wards was stronger, almost threatening. "Something is coming," she said at last, her voice low, carrying the weight of a warning. "The council has discovered more than a simple anomaly. They feel the disturbance your presence has caused, and the curse it stirs, it knows. It is a living force, patient, observant, and relentless. It punishes indiscriminately. It will not allow weakness, and it senses you, it senses potential." Valeth instructed him in subtle ways. how to measure the vibrations of the wards, how to recognize shifts in the curse's attention, how to speak without awakening more than necessary. Orion listened, absorbed, and practiced, though his hands trembled at every misstep. That night, the council convened in emergency. Orion and Valeth watched from the shadows as the elders argued heatedly, their voices sharp, their words laced with fear and suspicion. They spoke of humans as a potential threat, of broken wards, of disturbances in the magical balance. None of them knew the truth, that the anomaly was not destruction but awakening. "Something has changed," one elder said, his tone brittle. "Something we cannot control. Valeth, the wards are your responsibility, and yet even you cannot contain it. What do you propose?" "It is an opportunity. And they will try to control you, as they have always tried to control me. But you carry something they cannot measure." The contact was fleeting, almost imperceptible, yet it conveyed something far deeper than words. "You can," she said, "because you do not carry power in the way they do. You carry truth, honesty, and fear tempered by courage. And sometimes that is stronger than any ward, any spell, any curse." They did not make him less afraid, but they gave him a strange, fragile hope, a sense that perhaps he could survive what was coming. The next day, the wards reacted violently. Vibrations pulsed through the crystal towers, and a low hum echoed like a warning. Orion and Valeth stood together in the private corridor, feeling the resonance ripple through their bodies. "The curse knows," Valeth said. "It has recognized the thread we have begun to weave, and now it tests us." And yet she fought against it, choosing restraint, mercy, and calculation. He could not imagine carrying such a burden, yet she did so with a quiet strength that left him breathless. The day passed in careful observation, monitoring the wards and avoiding detection by the council. But that night the curse acted. A sound erupted in the air, not loud but piercing, a resonance that made the crystal walls vibrate and shimmer unnaturally. The energy seemed to sweep through the corridors, touching every corner of the dominion. Orion's chest tightened, his hands trembling, but Valeth remained composed, stepping toward the epicenter of the disturbance. "This is the test," she said softly, "and it is not kind. You must speak carefully, human. Your voice, it may be the only thing that can steady the wards." The effect was immediate. The vibrations slowed, the wards stabilized, and the oppressive energy receded slightly. Valeth watched him with a mixture of astonishment and cautious hope. "You see," she said quietly, "even a human voice, if pure, can influence the oldest of forces. Even a human can change what was thought immutable." The council would notice the fluctuations. They would investigate, and the curse, it had not vanished. It had only observed, catalogued, and learned. "You must rest," Valeth said, guiding him to a quieter corridor. "Tomorrow the council will demand answers, and you must be ready, not just to survive, but to act. You will be tested again, and this time it will not be subtle." That night, as he lay on the simple bed in the small chamber assigned to him, Valeth appeared again, not with authority, but with presence. "You have done well," she said softly. "But do not think this ends. The council will act. The curse will test us again, and the balance of the dominion may depend on you." I will try," he whispered. "Try is not enough," Valeth said. "You must be certain, you must be clear, and you must not falter even when fear tempts you to do so." As the night deepened, the wards pulsed once more, faint and almost imperceptible. But this time, Orion felt a subtle difference, a ripple of potential, a promise that even in the face of fear and power there was hope. And in the quiet under the alien stars that shone through the crystalline towers, he heard her voice again, closer, warmer, more insistent. The wards that had hummed and pulsed for centuries seemed almost alive, quivering in anticipation of what was to come. Orion Vale moved cautiously through the corridors, each step measured, each breath heavy with tension. Today, he understood, would be the moment where fear, truth, and power would collide. Valeth waited in the private chamber, the soft glow of her skin catching the early light. Her eyes were sharp, yet there was something softer now, an unspoken acknowledgement of what they had faced together and what they must face still. She had not spoken since he arrived, allowing the silence to stretch and settle between them, a quiet but potent reminder of the stakes. "The council knows," she said finally, her voice steady but carrying an edge of warning. "They have discovered the true extent of the anomaly. They will act. They will try to control, to punish, and to erase. You must be ready. That is what will change everything." The elders, glittering with their ancient power, argued and shouted. The wards around them quivered violently, almost threatening to snap. Ariane and Valeth moved through the shadows, unnoticed but fully aware of the eyes and senses tracking them. "This is unprecedented," one elder said sharply, pointing toward Valeth. "The curse, it reacts. The human, he is not like the others. He influences the energy of the wards. We cannot allow it to continue." None had ever seen Valeth speak with such authority, and none had ever seen a human carry such influence over the Dominion's forces. Orion took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the wards beneath him, feeling the resonance that had guided him through the last days. He focused, drawing on every lesson Valeth had given him. He spoke slowly at first, then with growing confidence, his voice clear, steady, and honest. The effect was immediate. The wards calmed, their vibrations aligning with the cadence of his words. The crystal walls shimmered, reflecting light in patterns that seemed to dance in harmony with the truth he spoke. The council elders froze, astonished by the change, by the power carried in a human voice, a voice of clarity, courage, and integrity. Valeth watched, her expression unreadable yet focused. The curse responded, shifting, loosening, reacting not with destruction but with recognition. And in that moment, Ariane understood. The curse was not simply a force of punishment. It was a guardian, a judge, and a teacher, and he had found the words to reach it. The council murmured, some in fear, others in awe. Ariane could feel the tension, the fragile balance that now hung between destruction and renewal. He had no certainty that this would last, no guarantee of safety, and yet he felt something stronger than fear, hope. Valeth stepped closer, her presence grounding him. "Do not falter now," she whispered. "The council will test you further, but your voice, your truth, can guide us." Ariane faltered, fear rushing back, but Valeth's hand steadied him, her touch firm yet comforting. "You are ready," she said simply. "Speak." Words that acknowledged fear but refused to bow to it. The wards responded instantly. The hum softened into a steady, harmonious vibration. Light flowed through the chamber, through the corridors, through the towers, as if the Dominion itself exhaled after centuries of tension. The council gasped, unable to fully comprehend the shift that had taken place. Valeth exhaled slowly, relief mingled with something softer, almost like awe. "You see," she whispered. "You did not destroy, you did not command, you spoke and the world listened." The curse, once a relentless force of control and torment, now pulsed with a different energy, responsive, aware, and no longer unyielding. "You have changed the balance," Valeth said softly, her eyes reflecting the shimmering light. "The Dominion itself listens now, not because of force, not because of fear, but because of truth." Then one elder older than memory itself spoke. "Perhaps we have been wrong," he admitted quietly. "Perhaps the human is not weak. Perhaps the voice of truth is stronger than any spell we have woven." And Valeth, standing beside him, her eyes softening just enough, seemed to share that quiet victory. The day passed in cautious observation. The council debated, the wards stabilized, and for the first time, humans in the Dominion were no longer dismissed as insignificant. Their voices had meaning. Their presence had power. That evening, as the crystal towers caught the glow of the setting sun, Valeth guided Ariane to a secluded balcony overlooking the city. The world stretched before them, vast, luminous, and full of potential. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have changed the course of history, and yet this is only the beginning. The council will adapt. The curse will test us again. But now we face it together. To truth, we are all bound by forces beyond simple comprehension, but the smallest voice can tip the scales. Then we will face it," she said, "together." And Valeth, for the first time in centuries, allowed herself a moment of hope. The Dominion, once rigid, fearful, and unyielding, had begun to listen, not to commands, not to threats, but to truth. And in the quiet of the night, under alien stars that shone through the crystal spires, Ariane whispered to Valeth, "The world is listening. And now it will never be the same." I only whispered it. Then the alien girl turned and purred, "Careful, human. I can hear everything HFY."